Hi, and welcome to the second week of our Lenten Bible study on women's encounters with Jesus in the Gospels. This week we're taking a look at Mary and Martha. It's a story that I think everybody knows, even people who are not really as familiar with the Gospel text. I think know the characters of Mary and Martha. Of course, Martha is the one who's busy. We've often seen as being in the kitchen, working, distracted by her many tasks. Mary sits at the feet of Jesus, which is the preferable place. But we're going to kind of dig into this and look at Mary and Martha and talk about where this story goes. So, I'm Pastor Joanne Groman Stewart, and
I'm Doug Stewart, pastor of Incarnate Word Lutheran Church.
Yeah.
Happy to be making a guest appearance on this wonderful broadcast.
Yeah, we have fun talking together about these things, so we thought we'd share some of our just conversation with you in this. So, Doug, where have you seen, what has been your experience with this story? What are your initial thoughts?
Well, okay, coming out of it from a sibling perspective, siblings don't often or always get along with each other. On a very surface level, I take heart in this, that it's like, oh, look, even Mary and Martha, siblings, don't always get along necessarily. So sometimes on a very surface level, I've seen it as just a sibling dispute. But on a deeper level, and it obviously goes deeper, one of the recent observations I've made about this text is that in Luke's gospel early on, the writer tells us that the inbreaking of the kingdom, that Jesus' proclamation of that inbreaking of the kingdom brings a divided response. Some are ready for it, others can't see it and aren't ready for it. Mm-hmm. I wonder if Mary and Martha's response, being divided as it is playing into that into that larger narrative.
Oh, that's a really interesting perspective. Yeah. My experience, I think, with this story has often been kind of either where it's used to lift up the role of women that don't, basically get out of the kitchen and come and sit at Jesus' feet, which in the first century was the place of a man, not a woman. And that this is seen as a very empowering story for women, where, the proper place for a woman is learning from Jesus. It's not sheltered away somewhere, as in some other traditions we see that. But I've also seen it used very negatively. And I've seen it as, just a chastising of Martha because she's working on behalf of the gospel, saying that her work is somehow not valued. Mm-hmm. It's not important. Mm-hmm. And I've also, believe it or not, heard sermons where, but usually male pastors are saying, see, this is the problem. Women fight. Mm. Women are catty and they can't get along. Mm. And so they don't belong in leadership.
You've often noted the Greek word for the work that Martha's doing. Could you maybe say a little bit more about that?
Sure.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, it's really interesting. In the gospel, it says that when we come to this, it said, Mary sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks. What we see here is the tasks that Martha is doing come from the Greek word diakonoia. Mm-hmm. And it can refer to serving at the table. Oh, every animal is in our living room right now. It can mean, and it's distracting, let me tell you.
Our cat's ready to serve us. Okay.
Yes. It can mean serving at the table, like Martha's out in the kitchen cooking soup, mm-hmm. getting ready to serve the menfolk. But that's probably not I don't think that's what's meant here, because there are other words that could have been used for that. Mm. Luke intentionally used the word that has at the root diakonoia, where we get our word deacon, mm-hmm. which in the early church referred to the leader of a house church, which means that it's possible, and I think we have to pause and think about this. Was Martha actually doing the Eucharistic work? Mm-hmm. Was she doing the proclamation? Was she standing in the place of being the leader of a house church? Mm. Which really raises things quite differently. Don't drink my coffee. I don't know. Well, I think it's an interesting way of looking at this.
Sure. Well, and the fact that what Martha's doing is she's doing, as I take it, the customary tasks of of hospitality. She knows what the rules are. She knows what you're supposed to do. And especially in this time, in this culture, hospitality is everything. I mean, cultures rise and fall on hospitality. So she's doing what she's supposed to be doing. But I'm wondering then, the fact that there's this stark contrast between Martha doing just what she knows she is supposed to do, that's what we do with hospitality. I wonder if Jesus, in sort of holding up Mary, is, in contrast to that, is redefining hospitality. But, and then that begs the question for me, what in our world today, what in the church, does Jesus redefine? And maybe we can get to that at some point as well, you know.
Yeah. Well, let's look at the characters in the story. Okay. First of all, we have Mary, who is seated at Jesus' feet. Mary is sitting at the place where you learn. It's the place where disciples sit. You know, in that time period, if there was a rabbi, generally the rabbi sat someplace, and all of his disciples, those who were learning from him, sat at his feet. But I think it's interesting to look at the whole narrative of the gospel, of all the places in Luke's gospel where people were at the feet of Jesus. We have the situation of we have the situation of the Gerasene demoniac when he is healed of demon possession. He sits at the seat of he goes to the feet of Jesus and bows down, giving thanks. And again, he is showing his discipleship. There's the woman who was forgiven of her sins. She puts herself at Jesus' feet. Again, in that place of discipleship. It seems that sitting at Jesus' feet is the place where disciples go. But it's also the place where you go to listen. And one of the first parables in Luke's gospel is the parable of the sower. And it ends with those who have ears listen. And so I think right away we see that part of discipleship, part of what it is to follow, is listening. And so Mary is there.
Yeah.
But I think we have to also be careful that listening isn't just sitting back and
pontificating in an ivory tower?
Exactly. It's not just sitting there and listening. Listening has to lead to something. Listening leads to doing.
Well, sure. And already, narratively speaking, in Luke's gospel, back in chapter 9, that's where Jesus has finally turned his face to Jerusalem. And he's heading to Jerusalem. And he's letting folks know that to follow him is going to require doing. So here's can I put on my super feminist hat for just a moment?
Oh, please do. I love when you become a feminist.
Well, no, but this is
You are
interesting. And maybe this is just me. I haven't read this anywhere, but back in chapter 9 of Luke's gospel, there's a dispute among two other siblings, James and John, about true greatness. And it seems like they are fighting about which one of them can be elevated to a higher place. Mary and Martha are serving. And they are actually, in serving, I think that even what they're doing, both Martha and Mary together, are epitomizing discipleship more than James and John are.
Oh, wow.
Again, that's just me, and that might be heresy. But what is a little heresy among friends, right?
Yeah, so. Exactly. That's really interesting.
Go ahead, folks. Disprove me. That's fine. I might be wrong. But I'm just thinking, I don't know that anything in the Gospels are put in accidentally. I don't know.
That is really interesting. Well, let's look at Martha now.
Okay.
We already said she's distracted by her many tasks. What does it mean to be diakonoia? What does it mean to be a deacon? If we're going that way. But she's distracted. Does that speak to the larger thing of, she's focusing on the little things. She's focusing on the things right in front of her. It's almost like she has blinders to what she's doing here. This is my job. This is what I have to do. And by doing that, it's almost like Jesus is saying to her, look up. and look around and look at the larger picture of what the gospel is. Look at the larger picture of what I am here to do.
Right.
This is the inbreaking of the kingdom of God. We're going to Jerusalem, folks.
Yeah.
And, what's going to happen in Jerusalem is not going to be pretty, but it is going to be transformational. So stop focusing on this. Come sit at my feet and listen to what has to go, what has to happen, what's coming up.
It's almost like Martha's focusing on the cosmetics, of the surface level stuff, and I wonder, in the church, when we deal with issues, sometimes I wonder if the issues we're dealing with are cosmetic issues. For example, styles of worship. That has always been a fight in almost every church. What do we do to make our worship more friendly to people? How do we make it more, jazzy, whatever it is? And I wonder if that's a cosmetic thing, where maybe the real question, the deeper question is, what does it mean for a church to be a community of disciples, a community of followers who speak with a voice that offers an alternative narrative to the world of brokenness and death all around them? Getting off on a tangent, I'm sorry, I'll be brief, I promise, but
No,
it's
I think that's
that
right.
famous story of what was the Russian Orthodox Church disputing around the time of the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. The streets of Moscow were burning, everything was falling apart, and they were disputing what color the Easter pyramids should be. Should they be gold or should they be white? Look what happened to the church in the Russian Revolution. It went away. It wasn't relevant. Again, that was a big tangent I just went off on, but I just wonder sometimes if we in the church get off on the wrong tangents. We just get going on these discussions that aren't really relevant to the mission of following Jesus to Jerusalem.
Yeah, no, I think that's right on. And I don't want to belittle the importance of Eucharistic ministry, of worship, of choosing the right liturgy and making our worship really speak to people. I think that is integral to what we do. But if that's all that we're doing, I think we're missing the boat. Because there is that broader vision that goes hand in hand of what is our mission?
Right.
What is our mission as a congregation? What is our mission as the larger church? We can get so caught up in the stuff of meetings and the stuff of committees, which are important, and I'm not saying they're not. They're very important, and that work is so valuable. But we can get so caught up in that work that we miss why we've come together as a committee, why we've come together to do these things and to talk about these things. It's about mission.
Yeah, loving God and loving neighbor is how we are to live our lives. It's not just words put up on a screen, right? And I think, that's what this call to discipleship is all about in Luke's gospel. I think it's all about doing, listening, like we talked about, and then doing. And so, obviously, this text of Mary and Martha is rich in all kinds of interpretations, but I think this is a very helpful text for us as we journey together in Lent, trying to figure out who we are with Jesus on the way to Jerusalem.
Absolutely. And I just want to mention one more thing, and this is my feminism coming out. For thousands of years, women have been excluded from ministry in the church in many ways. I think this text shows that even Jesus' vision was one of both men and women participating, both men and women as disciples, both men and women working together, working hand in hand.
Right.
And gender does play a role. And I think in this time, this year, when we're celebrating the ordination of women, I think this is a text that kind of holds, helps to inform that as well. So.
Absolutely.
All right. Yeah. Well, thank you for joining us, and there are going to be some questions below this video. Please join in, answer them, share your thoughts, and it's been good being with you, and we will be back next week. Thanks.